Hey everyone, Robert here, author of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life. Are you ready to start living your life to the fullest? Are you ready and willing to do what it takes to transform yourself and your life from ordinary to extraordinary? What about the lives of your children and grandchildren? Because that's the topic of today's episode. Welcome, my friends, to the Fully Engaged Life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Yes, you heard correctly in the introduction. Today, we are going to address ways that we can incorporate spirituality into the lives of our children and grandchildren in order to promote and protect the well-being of their young minds. Just imagine the amazing and positive impact on their lives if we were to share the practices of mindfulness with them from the time they were young. Imagine if they had the mental development that comes with the attainment of mindfulness, and along with it, the ability to think for themselves and have the seed of awakening already planted. There's an old saying that goes, "I wish I knew then what I know now." And for me, that certainly applies because I wish I had the mental attainments that I have undergone and that I have now, the understanding of mindfulness and meditative practices, because I would have done so many things differently in raising my children. So the only thing I can do now is to still share those things with them now that they are adults, but also share these things with my grandchildren. Over the years, I've been asked by the parents of youth students in my martial arts school, as well as other adults, to devise a curriculum of mindfulness that could be taught in the schools. I would love to do that. The problem is that the government has taken over control of the educational system. And since doing so, they have installed their own form of programming and indoctrination. And we can clearly see what's going on with the universities. But to think it's not happening in K through 12, you'd be mistaken. We see that the government-based educational system is centered far more upon propaganda, programming, and indoctrination, and sometimes even worse. But imagine if we were able to instill in the minds of our children the ability to remain mentally unaffected by those things. From what I see taking place in most schools, all grades, as well as universities, I think this is incredibly necessary at this point in time, and that's why I am choosing to present this material in this episode. And in order to clearly see what I'm talking about, because I wouldn't ask any of you to take my word for this, look into what is actually being taught in the school systems and in the universities. And then look at the behaviors and patterns and even the way of looking at the world that our young people are developing. You will quickly come to the conclusion that educational reform is something that is immediately necessary. But since it is highly unlikely, what can we do? How can we take responsibility and help the young people in our lives, our children, our grandchildren? What can we do to help them? And at the same time, let them have some fun. So what I'm doing is presenting the obstacles, the problems that I see And the first is the educational system. The second is in the family. And family itself is necessary and fantastic as long as it presents a healthy, non-toxic environment. However, one of the things that parents and grandparents tend to do is to push their religion and beliefs on their children and grandchildren. Now, they don't mean to do this in a sinister way. This is what they've been programmed to do, and this is what they believe is the right thing to do, and maybe it is for some. But I was inclined to allow my daughters to look into all different forms of religion and spirituality and see which one fit them the best. If you think back, you can probably recall that this may have happened to you when you were young, and I know it certainly did me. And my parents and grandparents, people that were explaining that to me and having me go to church and do all these things, it doesn't take much to realize that they're doing so mindlessly because they've been programmed to pass that on from generation to generation. That's one of the things that's taught within religion and the programming of religion. And I'm not saying that's all bad. I'm just saying we need to be more mindful ourselves in what we present to our children and how we present it. In other words, we must present it far more mindfully than we have a tendency to do. So these are a couple of the things that our young people face that hold them back, that make it more difficult for them to awaken, to develop mindfulness, and to have some sort of spiritual growth in their life. And as children, the younger children, they don't know any better. They don't know what is out there. They don't understand the benefits of these things. So to ask a 5-year-old or even a 10-year-old or even a 15-year-old, do you understand the value of mindfulness? Would you like to engage in those practices? They don't even understand what you would be asking of them. So how could they ever give you an informed, educated answer? They can't. This is why they need someone who has gone through the training and developed mindfulness for themselves to help them out, to help them experience it. Because this is one of the things we have to remember. You cannot just put a book or a pamphlet or something in front of them and expect them to understand, right? We have to experience these things for ourselves. So we have to grasp the fact that when we share this with the younger people, we have to make sure that they get to experience it for themselves. That's the only way you can get the benefits, and that's the only way you can attain mindfulness. Right now, in many areas where the schools are shut down and some are not reopening, what a wonderful opportunity we have before us to begin offering some basic mindfulness teachings to our children and grandchildren. This can easily be factored into their daily lessons. And my oldest daughter recently came to me asking me if I would put something together and get with the grandkids at least once a week to take them through such practices. So I've put something together, and we're going to begin doing that. We'll have a once a week session, maybe just 15 to 20 minutes, because they're kids and they need to have fun. We don't need to make this tedious. So we have to limit the amount of time, and we can increase that amount of time, as time goes by and their minds are capable of relating to the material. So I would like to share a few ideas with you here, and then you can adapt these in a way that best fits you and the young people in your life. So I'm going to break this down into 2 different sections. Okay? All of this is based in mindfulness, and the first thing we're going to do is take a look at keeping them connected to nature instead of tech. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't use their iPods or play their video games or anything. But what I'm saying is a lot of children now are totally disconnected from nature. I mean, totally. They don't even want to go outside and play anymore. That's ridiculous. What we need to do is help reestablish that connection to nature. Okay, so exercise 1 looks like this, and I'm going to divide this into 2 age groups. So for the younger kids, what you can do is take them outside after dinner, walk around the yard, and consciously engage the breathing process. Now, I know this sounds incredibly simple, but most people go through their entire lives without ever paying attention to how they're breathing. So this is our first mindfulness connection. And this is because the breath is at the core of all things martial arts, spiritual, everything. It's all about the breath. So we use this as a first exercise. So if you're dealing with younger children, if you have a day where the wind is blowing, take them out and have them breathe with the wind. This exercise is fantastic. When the wind is blowing, they're exhaling. And then when the wind pulls back for a second, they're inhaling. So you can have them mindfully breathe along with the wind. Now, for those who are 10 and older, you want to make sure that they put their hands on their lower abdomen, about at their belly button, and make sure that they are breathing in and out and feel the abdomen rise and fall. We want to bring the breathing down and help them reestablish diaphragmatic breathing. Children that are under that age are still naturally breathing that way anyway. And if you do this after dinner, getting out, walking around the backyard, talking a little bit, and then doing a breathing exercise is very good for the digestive system. So this is a lot of how mindfulness works in the beginning, is that we take something that we usually mindlessly perform, such as having the autonomic nervous system instinctively create the breathing process for us so we don't have to think about it. And we take something that's unconscious and we bring it into our conscious. We want to take something like breathing that nobody really has to pay much attention to and help them pay attention to it. This is the basis of how you begin to teach and develop mindfulness. And usually just do this for a few minutes and let them have fun with it. If they're 10 and older, you can start to have them do it for extended periods of time. And one of the great things about this simple breathing exercise is that as children, about the only time they really pay attention to the fact that they're breathing is on their birthday when they're blowing out those candles, right? Then they try to exhale for longer periods of time in order to blow those candles out. So they can associate this with something fun and enjoyable. And after practicing this a bit, they're not going to have any problem blowing out those birthday candles at their next party. I would also encourage to have a designated amount of breaths or a set period of time, depending on the age group you're working with. The reason for this is because this is going to begin to discipline and strengthen their mind by bringing in focused concentration. We're going to have them focus and concentrate on breathing, on the inhalation, on the exhalation. And this brings them into the present moment and helps them to cultivate a stronger, more focused mind. The second exercise would include practices that help them get their mind into their body, connecting more deeply to their body. Now, for the older children or even young adults that are engaged in the diaphragmatic breathing, that's going to help them to engage this. But we need to have something very specific as well for all age groups. So a practice that is very fun and easy, especially for the younger kids, is to set a marker in 2 different areas of your yard and have them run from one marker to the next. And this is wonderful because it helps them burn off some of that excess energy they have, right? So you can have them run from one marker to another, and don't make it too long. And then when they reach that second marker, you can have them do a somersault. And that's where you want to be as they do the somersault. And ask them as they do the somersault, can they feel their back rolling against the ground? And then as they get better at this, you can ask them, can you feel your feet as you're running? Can you feel your feet hitting the ground with each step that you take as you're running? Can you feel your back on the ground as you do a somersault? And of course, this exercise can be adjusted for older children or young adults and have them do like front shoulder rolls or back rolls, handsprings, cartwheels, whatever they would like, and you can have them be aware of the feeling, whether it's their hands, their feet, whatever is making contact with the ground. Get them used to being aware of their body touching and pressing against the ground. A third exercise is getting them even more connected with nature. After dinner, you could walk around your yard, you could walk on a hiking trail, you could go to a park, and you can teach them the difference between an oak leaf and an elm leaf. And then you can even pick a leaf from each tree, have them take it back and trace it and keep it in a little notebook. And this helps them to actually touch nature. See, this is far different than showing them a picture of it on your phone. Doesn't count. Okay? They need to actually go out to see those leaves blowing in the wind, falling from the tree onto the ground. They need to physically touch it and interact with it. That's why you're going to have them trace it. It's another form of direct interaction with that leaf. You can do the same with flowers. But the key is we want them to be able to identify the species as well as touch it. We want them to have this tactile information that will greatly benefit them. Find an anthill and have them crouch there with you and just observe how the ants work, how they can carry such large, heavy loads, how they work with one another to get the job done. So many things that you can explain, so many things in nature. You could bird watch as well. Another version of this revolves around the seasons. You can, at the point where summer is turning into autumn, ask them, take them outside and ask them, what are 3 or 5 or 10 characteristics? Well, how do you know that the autumn is coming? Have them think about it and see how they perceive that. And then you can help guide that perception and make sure it's correct. And in the process, teach them how the changing of the seasons works. And in so doing, they get even more connected to the natural environment. So breathing is essential to mindfulness. We have to bring that unconscious process into our conscious. And I love to do this with either the wind or, if you have access to a beach, the waves. So you can breathe with the waves, you can breathe with the wind, and this creates a sense of connection between you and nature. And it's pretty easy for young people to relate to. And if you're dealing with young adults, anyone older, teenager or early 20s, they can practice something like this and nobody will know that they're doing it, so it doesn't have to be embarrassing for them, right? So there's so many things that we can do this way. But the breathing is a big part of the practice. And then get their body involved in interacting with nature, touching leaves, maybe the bark, rolling and running and jumping around in the grass or in the sand. And remember that it isn't just the act of doing that. They need to do so mindfully. They need to be in the present moment. So we have to help guide them by asking them questions. What did that feel like under your feet while you were running? What did it feel like when you were running barefoot in the sand dunes or on the beach? What did it feel like when you were running in your new cool tennis shoes that you have? Whatever it is, this helps establish the connection we're looking for, both mentally and physically. Okay, and the second area I talked about is helping them develop mindfulness, right? So the first one was keeping them connected to nature instead of tech, and this one is helping them develop a sense of mindfulness. As I said, the breathing is the core of all of this, so there has to be some sort of breathing exercise. If they're a little bit older, it's fun to do something where you help them train to hold their breath. So you may do this in the water. If they're swimming, you can do it as they're seated, whatever you like. Have them breathe in for 10 seconds, hold their breath for 10 seconds, breathe out for 10 seconds, and then you can build on that exhalation as well. And so this way, they have to stay mindful and in the moment as they're doing a timed breathing practice. And put together any exercise that makes them pay attention to what they're doing in the moment. Now, this in itself is not mindfulness, but it is a way to help begin developing it. We want to shift away from the thoughtless, mindless type of actions where we're just on autopilot, and instead make sure that our actions become very mindful, very purposeful. So we are engaged in what we are doing at any point in time instead of walking around in this haze, the stupor, being asleep. And a lot of people have commented to me lately on how they're noticing this sort of sleepwalking effect in the younger people. It almost looks like they're not even there. They're not present. And for a lot of it, they're not. They're stuck in their heads somewhere. So this helps draw them back out where they should be and put them into a sense of connection with the present moment, with their own body, with their environment. For smaller children, like I have a 3-year-old grandson right now who is just really, really into letters and numbers. So you could get those, right? They have the magnetized letters. And you could take the letters that make up their name and kind of gently hide them around the room or outdoors and help them search for them and help them put them on the magnet board in a way that they will be able to spell their name. This way you help them learn to spell, to understand the letters, and they get to work with their environment. But most importantly, it pulls them into the present moment instead of just mindlessly slapping some letters together. They have to engage more deeply. You can do the same with memory games. So with simple games or practices like this, the goal is to create a connection between the child's mind and body, and then help their mind to become more disciplined, more focused, while having fun, and also to create a greater sense of connection between them and their environment, the natural environment around them. My wonderful wife and I were talking the other day about how incredible it would be if you had a small garden on your property and you could help the children develop mindfulness through growing vegetables and in turn help them eat in a far healthier manner. And even in so doing, they learn a little empathy here because they have to care for the plants. They have to water them. They have to pull the weeds. They have to make sure that the garden is being cultivated correctly. And this allows them to engage in their own cultivation as well. See, they grow up seeing their parents pull out a frozen package of green beans from the freezer, mindlessly tearing the package open and dumping them in a pan to boil them or however they're going to prepare them. Or they see them open a can and dump the can into the pan, right? This is all very mindless. But when they actually get to physically and mentally engage the process of that growing from a seed into an actual bean and then being able to pick it and clean it and actually eat it, then the cycle becomes complete. And this is an incredible education that has a positive impact on their dietary intake. And then that brings us to another game, a tasty game, where at the dinner table, you can ask the children to describe their food. What does it taste like? What does it feel like in your mouth? What does it smell like? See, instead of just gobbling it down as we mindlessly engage in a meal so we can hurry up and get it over with and get back to what we were doing, or while we're watching television or looking at our iPad or phone or otherwise engaged, actually engage the meal itself. And I think you're seeing how this could benefit all of us as adults as well, huh? So it's a simple way to be mindful and be mindful of your life. And what an incredibly valuable thing to pass on to our children. Don't you agree? So there are some ideas for you and ways that we can help our children to attain mindfulness. I've got an entire program put together, and there's far more to it than what I could ever describe here in a simple half an hour show. But you get the idea, and you can use these. You can build off of what I've presented here and work with the young people in your family. And if you are an educator and you have the ability, the freedom to incorporate anything like this in your teaching curriculum, please do so. Our young people need this sort of thing. And what a wonderful way for them to learn such valuable life lessons. By doing this, we can help our young people to reclaim their ability to think for themselves and to have the seed of awakening within them. And then it's up to them if they choose to develop it or not. But at least it's there. At least they have a chance. And we can help the younger generation to take themselves back and start a whole new generation of people who have the ability to awaken early on in life. I know in many other countries they teach meditation, actual meditation or meditative practices, breathing practices, and things in their curriculum. And those children seem to excel in other things that they do and in life. So imagine if we could bring some of that to our own children. But we have to understand that this is not the responsibility of the educators. We have to rely on ourselves to do it because we have to accept responsibility for it. And then if they're doing it as well, oh yeah, fantastic. Everybody wins, right? That's beautiful. But if not, at least we are living up to our responsibility and giving our children the best benefit we possibly can. So please try some of these out and see what you think. I'm always happy to hear your feedback. I'm really happy to hear what you are doing, how you took this and made it your own for your family and for the young people that you know. And make sure that you visit me at www.expansionmastery.com. Grab your autographed copy of Expansion Mastery and all the other goodies there on the site. And make sure that you help us out on social media. It's getting tougher and tougher to do anything on there. Obviously, being shadow banned does not help in the least. We are not allowed to advertise or anything on there. So please help us out and hit the like, subscribe, but most of all, share this information, share the podcast with friends and family that you think would benefit from it. And anyone who could possibly benefit from this now or in the future. That's the best thing we can do. Together, we can keep this consciousness shift alive, and we can help propel it into the now. And as always, I wish you and your children the very best in your practices, your mindfulness practices, and your life. Take care.